in today's society and with all the things that are going on in society today, I mean, right or wrong, everybody has their opinions on the different things that are going on. And, but the key point, and this is one of the things I talk to my officers about, is look at every situation as a new situation, be open-minded, be fair, and be honest. And if you do those things, then you're going to be successful.
What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the Security VIP Podcast, the official podcast of the security industry and home of nothing but the truth. As always, I am your host, Taylor May. And on today's episode, I'm pretty honored to be sitting down with our VIP guest today because this is a man that has made a huge difference in the K-12 vertical for the state of Oklahoma. And as I've said countless times before, if there is one perspective that I appreciate the most, it's the perspective of an end user. Now, school districts in the U.S. start to find a safe but secure way for students and staff to return back to school. Putnam City Schools in Oklahoma City can rest easily knowing they have Chief Mark Stout in charge. So with that being said, Chief, welcome to Security VIP, man. How are we doing today?
Great. Glad to be here. Glad I could join your podcast and excited about this.
Now, Chief and I were going back and forth before we kick this off because Chief is a OU grad. Most of you guys know that I am an OSU grad. So we are just, we're stepbrothers pretty much. But OU is definitely a great school. Great to hear some Baker here and there, right? Right.
Yeah. It's all in fun.
Exactly, Chief. So, Chief, tell us about yourself, man. Like I said, most people know you in the state of Oklahoma, but I want to get you nationwide known and some of the things you're doing at the school district there. But first off, kind of just give us a background about your history in law enforcement.
Sure. Like I said, my name's Mark Stout. I'm with the Putnam City Schools Campus Police Department here in Oklahoma City. Been here 28 years, the Putnam City School District is an independent school district within Oklahoma County, here in the center of the state. We cover 3 different municipalities. For myself, I graduated University of Oklahoma. I have advanced law enforcement certification in the state of Oklahoma. I'm a graduate of the 196th session of the FBI National Academy in Quantico, Virginia. I started my law enforcement career in California many years ago. That's where I was born and raised, and then moved to Oklahoma. Went to school here, went to college here, and then got back into law enforcement, and been doing that ever since. And so I'm here at Putnam City. I'm the chief of police, head of security, FEMA director, emergency management director, and wear a lot of different hats. But primary thing is the chief of police of our campus police department.
Great to hear that, Chief. A man of many hats for sure. And, I'm sure the last, about 30 years you've been in law enforcement, I'm sure you've seen it change dramatically throughout a school district environment as well, just in general. So maybe talk about your first day in the job to where you are now and see how much that has evolved being in your role.
Sure. When I started here with the Putnam City Campus Police Department some 28 years ago, the primary objective at that time for the campus police department was building security. Keeping the buildings safe and secure at night and in the evenings. We did have a few officers in the schools during the day, but that was the key point of that, was keeping the buildings secure so that school could continue the next day. That is reversed pretty much now to where our focus is on having officers in the schools interacting with the kids, with the students and staff and patrons. And the other side of that, the security of the buildings, is all switched to technology. Technology plays a huge part in our department. And we're very proud of our technology partners and our security systems that we have in place. And that's been the biggest change is this whole switch from building security being a priority, and now because of things that happen in society and things, our officers being in the school, providing a safe learning environment as opposed to make sure the buildings are okay.
Yeah, it's pretty cool to hear, Chief. And I work with a lot of school districts at AnyVision. Obviously, the company I work for, but Santa Fe ISD, Texas City ISD, and some of these other school districts I work with here in Texas, they all have school resource officers in place. So, talk about the importance of having an SRO on a campus setting and kind of what that means for a school district. Because some school districts are kind of anti against school police, and some SROs are very willing to have you guys on campus on a day-to-day basis. So maybe talk about that and the importance of that kind of role in a campus setting.
Sure. Campus police officers, in my opinion, are a specific breed or type of officer. It's very difficult for a school district to take an officer that's been working the street for 15 years and shove them into a school. It's a big change for them. And so we work very hard at hiring officers, and I know other school districts across the country that have large police departments just for their school districts. Those officers are specifically focused, those SRO officers, on one thing, and that's keeping their students and staff and the buildings safe, and keeping a good learning environment so kids can enjoy being at school and it not be scared to be at school. And I think as we move forward, we've seen some school districts that, like you said, that are shying away from having armed police officers in their buildings. And I can see that being an issue. If you have an officer that's coming in there as a street officer, that could be difficult. And it's difficult for them to change over to the mindset of we're working with kids. And we have to not lighten up, but we need to remember that we're there for those kids to learn and for them to get an education. We're not there just to arrest. As a matter of fact, that's what I tell my officers, is that we're not there to arrest kids. We do when we have to, but we're there to help them get an education. And I think that's the number one important thing for school resource officers as we go across just across the country and stuff, is that's their focus. Your focus isn't there to fight violence. Yes, you stop violence and you keep kids safe, but you're there to help those kids get an education.
For sure. And thinking about back in my high school days here in Dallas, I went to Plano Senior, big 5A, I think now 6A school. And it's a very open campus school. And I can't imagine, going to school nowadays as a high school student and just hearing all the mass shootings happening or violence occurring. And I don't think we had a school resource officer in place. We might have had someone here and there, but Plano is so big and so large of a campus that it's very hard to manage just from a general surveillance perspective. And having guys like you guys would definitely help. I think as a student, which I probably overlooked it back then, but would definitely appreciate now if I had a school resource officer to speak to on a day-to-day basis or see around campus. Because I spoke with again, Santa Fe ISD, who's one of my clients, and really know their sergeants and the chief over there, and Taylor, they develop these relationships with these students, right?
Correct.
And then it gives that kind of reassurance that, hey, we're walking into a safe environment as a student. So I definitely appreciate that. And Mark, you mentioned technology in the K-12 environment, and you're a big advocate of technology in the workplace. So maybe talk about some of these new technologies. We're going to get to COVID-19 in a second, since we've done since COVID-19, but maybe talk about that proactive mentality you put in place with these certain technologies for the district.
Sure. After being chief for several years, when I first took over as chief, the camera system and access control systems were actually run out of our maintenance department. The superintendent at that time said, why are our security measures being maintained out of maintenance and not out of our security or our campus police? So it got turned over to us. And one of the first things we did that was the biggest impact in our technology pursuit of security is system integration. System integration was the key for us, because at that time we were running a camera system, a access control system, and an alarm system that did not work together. None of them were compiled. They didn't work together or anything like that. They were all separate systems. They didn't even talk to each other. And so that was our first goal, is to get system integration. And we achieved that. We went with a specific company with Genetec that allowed us to bring all of those things into one package, into one system. And that system has grown from about 300 to 400 cameras to today we're almost to 1,100 cameras we're operating throughout the district, 500 to 600 access control points, and thousands of alarm points, whether motion detectors, heat detectors, radars, things like that are all anything from all those alarm points. And then we also are operating our facial recognition software that integrates with our VMS and our security center through Genetec. We're obviously using AnyVision as our facial recognition. I think a key point, I know a lot of school districts, and I'll bring this up right now, a lot of school districts are scared of facial recognition because of they feel like they might get privacy issues, and there are issues coming out from ACLU and things like that about facial recognition being used in lots of different venues. And one of the key things that we've promoted from the beginning is that we are not using facial recognition to track students. We're not using it to track people or staff or anything like that. We're using facial recognition in the hopes of stopping someone that we have perceived as a threat that's been put into the system from coming into a building where they're not supposed to be and or where they possibly could pose a threat in that building. That's the only time we use it. And from that standpoint, we feel like we're not violating privacy or anything like that. It's not watching students particularly, or like I said, tracking them or anything like that. So I think it's a key point as we move forward with facial recognition and some of the other things that we're going to be using and things across the board. So.
Yeah, a lot of different technologies that Mark just brought up. The first one, guys, with Genetec is a giant in our industry. And the good thing about Genetec is it's an open platform. So, when you consolidate all your properties to a Genetec system, security center, you can bring in all these integration partners such as AnyVision, FaceRec, the access control piece, any other analytic that you want to fit into that kind of fits the bill. So that's what Mark's done. He's very smart to do that because not a lot of end users do that, especially with the access control game too. With Genetec, they use Mercury panels. So then you have an open ecosystem with the Mercury hardware on the back end too. And then talking on his point about AnyVision, I'm not trying to give a plug, to the company I work for, but the school environment, guys, to his point about privacy, PII and all those certain kind of regulations, a school campus is a public, entity. So, here in the U.S., you've got no constitutional right to privacy in a public setting. So whether you like it or not, whether that's a school district, an amusement park, a retail center, a football stadium, you've got cameras watching, monitoring, recording, whether you like it or not. Now, just to Mark's point, again, not trying to plug in AnyVision here, but, any kind of face rec system, it has no idea who you are unless you actually tell that system, here's a picture of this person, right? Here's ABC. So again, it's all about, I think, misinformation, misconception about the technology in general. I think Mark definitely understands that. He's preaching that too, which is why I had him on this podcast, because he's full of a wealth of knowledge, even though he's an OU guy. So moving on, Mark. Let's get to the good stuff.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah.
So not the good stuff, actually. So COVID-19, man, I know this has been up and down in schools. Some schools are starting to slowly reopen. Some are still having virtual classes. Talk about what are the things that you guys are doing in the district. And I think I saw something the other day about you guys with Putnam City Schools on what the student staff are going to do or attempting to do right now. So maybe talk about how you guys are navigating this new normal right now with COVID.
Sure. We, as a district, decided several weeks back to go for virtual school for the first 9 weeks, distance learning for the first 9 weeks. We're very fortunate that the citizens within our school district, like I said, we basically cover the whole northwest side of Oklahoma City, 3 different municipalities, Oklahoma City, Bethany, and War Acres, but they really support us in bond funds and technology. And so we're able to go to a distance learning. We were able to provide, our IT department has provided over 19,000 iPads to our students, including hotspots and iPads that are already 4G and can connect right away. And so one of the key factors is we decided early that we were going to go to distance learning for the first 9 weeks. Halfway through these 9 weeks, which started last week, we started classes last week on distance learning. Halfway through, we'll evaluate for the next 9 weeks. And one of the key points that our district did is we made a decision. The superintendent made the decision, and we started planning and working towards that decision of going virtual for the first 9 weeks, and that's what we're going to continue to do. I think there are some issues if you go back and forth, and don't. Obviously, you got to consider the parents and the decisions they have to make in regards to the welfare of their children, and or the taking care of their children, parents' work, all those kinds of things have to come into play. And so at Putnam City, we have gone virtual for the first 9 weeks, and we'll continue that until we feel that it's in the best interest and safe for our students and staff to be back together in the buildings, which we all want. That's what we're striving towards. We all want our kids back, but we're only going to do that when it's safe and secure for our kids to come back.
Understood. And Mark, ever since COVID-19 came out, here in the industry, there's been some controversial technology that has been released. And I think, I was speaking with certain different end users and certain different manufacturers, and it's kind of poisoned the water a little bit ever since COVID-19, because some manufacturers are making these crazy claims about, certain technologies just to get a quick buck, quick dollar.
Right.
So I would love to get your take, because I ask this all the time with manufacturers, and every guest I have on this podcast series, I always love to hear about thermal detection, fever detection, and I want to hear your take about this technology, what your feedback is.
Well, we've studied some of that. We've been working with our integrators, which is Orion Security Solutions, based here out of Oklahoma City, but they're nationwide, and they working with them and then also evaluating a lot of different products, because you're right, we got hit by several different products right up front when people started detecting fever detection and heat detection. And I'll be honest with you, I had a little bit of issues with exactly one. I've got 1,500 students coming into a high school, 1,500 plus, coming into a high school through one or two main entry points. One, picking out the one with the fever. I find that kind of difficult to do with just a thermal image type situation. We didn't feel like at that time it was really practical to that point of trying to find, well, that one's 1 degree higher than this person and so forth. And I know there's been a lot of advertising and a lot of things out there. I've read the articles, I've seen the videos of all the different products. Nothing's really sold me on is that that's going to work in a school. You look all the way down to elementary schools. Elementary kids, there's probably, in talking with our school health people and the state health people, in a typical elementary school, there's probably students with fevers all the time because kids have different fevers for different things. And to just focus in on fevers and trying to single them out in a crowd kind of gives the stigma of that person has a fever. It just becomes too big of a mess and too big of a problem. And I don't think the technology is completely there yet to make that strong determination that person, they might have a fever. That doesn't mean they have COVID, but then we're going to treat them like they have COVID. And it just gets really messy, really messy.
Yeah, I agree. And if anything, guys, I've said this before, and Orion Security Solutions is a great integrator to work with. And I had Sean Crane on this podcast earlier, I think last month, and he told me, Taylor, it has to be used as a layer. It has to be used as not the sole solution to COVID-19. And I've said that countless times, because if you're going to implement some kind of thermal solution, what's the next step, right? Is it an identification tool like AnyVision or FaceRec? Is it touchless access control? Is it contact tracing? I mean, Mark, here in Texas and in Oklahoma, when it's 105 degrees outside and everyone's got an elevated temperature, man, I mean, how do we combat for that?
Right.
So So again, guys, Mark gets it, and this is why I have him on this podcast series, because he's not only an end user, but he's a key professional in learning about these technologies and also vetting these technologies and relying on guys like Sean Crane and Ryan, as well as certain manufacturers to, speak the truth, which is what this podcast series is all about. So Mark, I definitely appreciate that. And, kind of moving on here, my last kind of couple questions for you is just a kind of a broad question, and you can answer this however you want to. But I work with a lot of school districts, and I always ask them this question. I said, guys, everything from the superintendent level to the chief level to director of technology level, how do we bring more awareness to school safety and security? Right, even through a pandemic right now, I think we're overlooking security and how the importance of security right now, and people don't think things are going to happen
Mhm.
because we have a pandemic going on. So, how do we bring more awareness to that subject, Chief?
I think as we move through this, I agree the pandemic shifts people's focus away from keeping our schools safe. We've had to battle that already as we've opened schools back up to teaching staff, secretarial staff, custodial, all those kind of things as we open. We have 30 school sites spread over 43 square miles. And as we've opened those back up, some of them said, well, the pandemic, we're going to have to leave these doors open. No, we leave those doors open, anybody from the street's going to walk in, and who knows what that could cause. And so we still have to maintain security even during the pandemic. And I think we just have to, I send my officers out. I've got a staff of 15 officers that we still send out to the schools. Even though we don't have students, those officers are still in their schools today, and they will be tomorrow, and going around and going around to schools that don't have officers specifically assigned. They go in and check in with them, make sure things are still being handled correctly as far as secure, keeping their buildings secure, keeping their staff secure. If there are any students on property, say for sports or whatever it might be, that they're in the correct environment that they need to be able to do their sports and not be worried about security issues. And we just have to continue that process. As soon as you let up, that's when something's going to happen. I would rather be prepared and keeping things going and keeping people aware of things and deal with an incident than be unprepared and be sitting back and just letting things happen because of the pandemic or for any reason and have something happen and us not be on top of it. And so we just have to continue to try to be on top of things and continue watching for stuff.
Mark, talk about your leadership for a second, because I had a conversation with Texas City ISD, the superintendent of Texas City ISD, and he said, Taylor, his name is Dr. Rodney Cavendish, who will be on an episode this month, but he said, Taylor, I am not an expert in security. This is why I hired a man named Mike Petranga, former Secret Service agent, to lead our security and technology department. But talk about that standpoint from your perspective and your leadership team, allowing you to actually do your job and bring these certain policies, procedures, and technologies. What has that meant for you in the district?
It's been, I feel very fortunate for the leadership that I work for, my superintendent, my executive director of operations, that allow me to operate the police department within the confines of we have district policy and we have campus police department policy books. The campus police policy book doesn't override district policy, but it is what it is coexists with district policy and allows us to work efficiently with the district, establishing relationships with your security personnel, with school administrators, site administrators, establishing relationships with the superintendent. I feel very comfortable. I know I can go to my superintendent's office and say, Superintendent, we need to talk, and we can sit down and work out a problem. Along those same lines, I think it's important that leadership of security, campus police, whatever that district might have, is in tune with their staff. I meet with my officers every day. Lineup is, I have lieutenants, I have a major, I have assistant chiefs and things like that. All of us meet every day. Whether it's just to sit and talk about the weather or the OU-OSU football game, because we're evenly split in our staff, or it's to talk about something serious, or to do some quick, even quick professional development thing in 20, 30 minutes. We do that every day, and I think it's a success of our department. And therefore, the officers feel comfortable going out and doing what I need them to do. I also, along those lines, it's important for the head of security in school districts, especially in large school districts such as ours, that a school administrators and even teachers know they could call me. So I don't wear suit and tie. Some people wear suit and tie, wear a uniform every day. I can walk into any of my schools, everybody knows who I am. And I think that's important, in that as security people in your school districts and things, school districts are communities in amongst themselves. We look at ours as our own little, city or community. And it's important that people know who you are, and that you're an integral part of that community. And if there was ever anything that if and when I retire from here, that is kind of the people that take over for me at that time, continue that type of relationship and that type of atmosphere as we move forward and things. So
It's really good to hear that, Chief, and you're kind of paving the path right now. I like what you said there, because you guys do have an open door policy, it sounds like, throughout the district, where you guys can develop these relationships and have that kind of direct form of line of communication there too. So I definitely appreciate that guys, because that starts from the top. It starts from the superintendent, down to chief, down to director of technology, down to what policies and procedures they have to put in place. So I'm glad that you guys have a school board that allows you to do your job, because not a lot of school districts have that luxury, which I'm trying to portray that here in this podcast series. So, it takes guys like Chief and his team to, do the things he's done. And that's why they've been so successful, guys. If you look at all the things he's implemented and, had that proactive mindset, that's why Chief and the team at Putnam City have been so successful. So, Chief, you kind of hinted at my last question here, man. Someone new that maybe would, whenever you retire, whenever that day is, whenever we can, go catch a game together on your schedule and have a beer together. Talk about what you would leave to someone new in your role as one piece of advice, and maybe your legacy that you want to leave behind.
I think in today's society, and with all the things that are going on in society today, I mean, right or wrong, everybody has their opinions on the different things that are going on. And, but the key point, and this is one of the things I talk to my officers about, is look at every situation as a new situation, be open-minded, be fair, and be honest. And if you do those things, then you're going to be successful, and you're going to be able to handle the many different situations that are facing us today. Obviously, law enforcement, I'm not going to get into politics, but law enforcement is an uphill battle right now. And law enforcement, security, all those things are an uphill battle right now. And we've got a job to do, in the sense of we can't always sit here and say, well, this is the way we've always done it. We've got to be willing to move on. We've got to be willing to look at new ideas. We've got to be willing to listen, and to listen, and then make changes from listening to whatever the situation might be. I have found through my career that if I have an angry parent, or an angry teacher, or even an angry administrator that has some issues with something an officer's done or something an officer's not doing, you sit down with them and you let them talk, and you listen, and you learn from that, and then you go from that point on in trying to help them. Doesn't mean you have to agree with them. It doesn't mean you have to bow down to them or do exactly what they want, but you need to be willing to listen and be willing to change, if you can change, for the betterment of your department, of your district, and of your community.
Words of wisdom from Chief himself. I love it, man. I love it. So, Chief, normally I would ask, what's the contact information? But the last thing you need is a bunch of manufacturers just blowing you up after this podcast series, man. So, for those that want to have or get more information about the school district and what you guys are doing, what's the best way to do that?
You can go to PutnamCitySchools.org, which is the district website. There's a link on there for campus police. and you can go through that, or feel free to email me. I'm open to people emailing me at any time. And it's just mstout@putnamcityschools.org. And if anybody out there, vendors or non-vendors or other police departments, campus police or security, you want to talk about some of the things we do, or if there's anything we could do to help you, we're more than happy to do it. And just email me again at mstout@putnamcityschools.org.
All right, guys. Well, you heard it first. I tried to stay away from his email, but he announced it officially. So awesome, Chief. Well, appreciate the time, man. For those that have questions, comments, or concerns, feel free to email me at info@securityvip.net. Once again, that's info@securityvip.net. A couple of different ways to stay connected here on the Security VIP podcast. Follow us on LinkedIn to see the recent announcements about our VIP guests. Listen or view us on YouTube. You can subscribe to our channel on YouTube, as well as listen in on Spotify.com if you are on the road. Thank you, Chief, for the time, man. We'll catch you guys in the next one.
Thank you.